just on that, do you believe identity keeps on changing? Is identity fluid as well as, I mean, you mentioned sexuality. Just to build on that.
So what is identity, right? Identity is essentially a performance. We perform an identity.
Mm.
You perform your blackness. You, as a black man working in a white corporate space, tone down the performance of your blackness in some instances. In some spaces that are maybe majority black, you up, what's it, you like inflate the performance. Maybe
Mm.
sometimes at home when we go back to, or if you go back to rural parts, again, so identity is a performance in every aspect of it, right? We perform our culture, our religion, our race, our gender. I find myself performing my gender because I do CrossFit, right? So in those spaces, which are sometimes quite hyper masculine, I am performing a masculinity, or I'm choosing not to perform a masculinity. So I go to CrossFit in tights, and that is a very conscious thing of me not performing. But what
Mm.
identity is a performance. And that's not a bad or good thing, right? It's how we make sense of the world.
Mm.
We are always going to perform an aspect of our identity in more or less degree in order to create acceptance. Because everything about society is reward and punishment. Everything. From birth to death, we are taught how and what to be, what is rewarded, what is punished. And identity is the same thing. We know what a good black is in the space. We know what a good white is in the space. We know what a good gay is in the space. We know what a good woman is in the space. And so we learn this through our lives. And then, of course, so if you think of like, we are like a box of pencils, and each of those pencils is an identity of ours. And we just pull out the pencil that we think is appropriate in that moment.
Mm.
And that's not inauthentic. That's not like, oh, that's so inauthentic. You must be your authentic self all the time. I'm like, that is such a basic and incorrect understanding of the complexity of identity. It is so impossible to always be your authentic self
Yeah.
because it just doesn't exist. Like that isn't a real thing. So for me, identity is a constantly evolving thing. And what, like, as we've seen, so identity, like I said, is a performance, and we're constantly learning the boundaries of that performance, right? So what is masculinity, particularly for boys who go to all boys schools? But let's kind of say all men. We're kind of given a script. This is what masculinity is.
Mm.
And it's like, must be strong, blah, 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 all those
Mm.
tropes.
Yep.
And we kind of have to read from the script, right? And that's what identity is, right? That's we're just performing the script. And some boys struggle, right? They struggle to read the script, and then they're
Mm.
punished for it, right? Some
Mm.
boys are really good at that, but that's not really who they are, and they also struggle, right? Internally. So when identity shifts is when we actually update the script, and we're seeing that now, right? We are encouraging men to update their script of what they thought masculinity was. We are encouraging black people in corporate, at least I am, but I know that it's not easy to like bring more of themselves. But again, there are always rewards and punishments. So identity is not a static thing. It is a constantly evolving process in terms of what we can perform within society, but also within ourselves. Is we are constantly redefining what blackness or whiteness means for us, or what masculinity, like what, and it's not about saying they're good and bad aspects. It's like, what works for me? What
Mm.
aspects of my masculinity aid me and bring me joy and bring me security, and what things no longer serve me? There's a really fantastic, it's like my favorite theoretical understanding of identity, and it's actually called disidentification. So, in a nutshell, there are two theories of identity. One either identifies as something,
Mm-hmm.
so you're given the script and you take on the script entirely and you become that
You
man,
run with it.
right?
Yep.
That's to identify. The other one is to counter identify. So you're given the script of what a good man is and you reject it entirely. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But disidentification sits right in the middle and it says, we are complex. The world is complex. How do I look at both of these scripts as both identifying and counter-identifying and take what makes sense for me and for me to constantly reevaluate what that is? And I love that one can constantly be assessing what parts of our blackness, of our religion, of our culture, of our language, of our sexuality work for us and which don't, and bring them into that box of pencils, not inauthentically, but as what makes sense for me right now. And maybe I reevaluate in a month, maybe I reevaluate in 25 years. What's the difference? But it's not a
That's
static point.